be a blend. My goal is to get to the scientific aspect of writing and the levels of information, but so this video connects primarily to the scientific, but I'm going to begin with something that's rhetorical and socio-cultural, kind of a blend. So first, there are these things called terministic screens. And as we think about how we deal with information or how we produce information, we do want to take into account what is commonly known as biases or stereotypes. Bias is understandable, it's expected. Kenneth Burke came up with this term, terministic screens. They're basically the way we filter the world. And so there's this example on a Weebly created for Kenneth Burke. Everything covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. Versus the hijab-wearing lady. Nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. So the idea is that they're both interpreting the other fashion, the other part of culture as based on their own value set or ideology. And so this is a little bit sociocultural, a little bit rhetorical. So when we talk about terministic screens, it is the filter by which we see the world. And so depending on which lens we look at the world through, which belief, which part of our identity, we will perceive different things. Different things will stand out to us. And since we are complex human beings, sometimes there are beliefs in a moment that get foregrounded, while other beliefs get backgrounded. And so in the moment, we may believe four different things, but we only in a moment are focused on one, and that may change how we're viewing a situation. Being aware of those things that make up our identity, or those beliefs that we hold, or those ideologies or worldviews that we hang on to, and how they might color the way we either produce information or interpret a situation or interpret someone else's information is key, because it's okay to have bias. Everybody has bias. Everybody struggles with stereotyping, especially on stuff they don't know. But we also all just believe stuff, and bias is okay as long as we're self-aware about it. So let's dig in a little more and see how this ends up applying to the scientific aspect of writing. So as we dig into the scientific aspect of writing, we've already covered what is science. It's and when a writer deals with questions about how we work through knowledge. In another video, I'll talk a little bit about the sociocultural blend and what counts as knowledge, because that's going to play in here. But there is a blend between what is knowledge and what counts as knowledge in a particular culture. And so we want to be aware that in some cultures, certain types of information or certain sources of information are privileged sources or more trusted sources. This is where we get things like academic sources are valuable in the college environment for specific reasons. They anchor to logic, and they have certain genre norms, and they produce knowledge in a certain way. Some people feel that certain news places are more trusted than others. There are some people who will swear by Fox News and ignore everything from CNN. There are some people who will swear by CNN and ignore everything from Fox News, and we get these kind of interesting things. So in response to the development of the hashtag fake news kind of thing in 2015, 2016, 2017, I put together what I call the levels of information spectrum. It's the way we deal with information, or the way we might produce information. And so I've got the first zones, the green zone, and there are four parts to this. First, so the top level of information is the facts, the actual truth. Now, in the scientific realm, truth can be had. And so there is. It's not completely relativistic. There are some things we know that we know that we know, and that they're true no matter what a person believes. I have two legs right now. It would take a whole lot of work to get me to believe that I didn't have two legs, that wasn't truthful, that my body wasn't physical and tangible, barring sci-fi, fantasy, what have you. But the facts are the facts. So this is kind of like, if we go to that age-old question, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? And we can say, yes, it makes a sound. No one has to be there to prove that fact, but humans might want to be there to prove that fact, to verify it, but that doesn't mean we have to have an observer for something to actually be true. So it breaks the Schrodinger's cat thing. Unless, of course, you're Doctor Strange and the tree falls in the woods and you create this giant portal for it to fall through so it doesn't actually hit the ground. And then that's different. So beside the point, the first level of information is the actual truth that, whether we believe it or not, that is the fact. After that, we get what is, so the facts, the actual truth, are really hard to sometimes present. The next level is an accurate reporting of the facts, and that's what we usually try and do as writers. We want accurate reporting of the facts. This is truth condensed and retold, preferably without bias at this level. And for some, that feels kind of like a pipe dream. It's to say that, when we look at that terministic screen and say, I have a filter for the world, is it possible for me to accurately report the facts? We can say it takes a lot of work, but that would be the goal. So this would be preferable, but then we would also be willing to accept, and this is where most reporting comes from, but a reporting of the facts with a mild but self-aware bias. So how many people, this points to the fact that many people, even with training, tend to condense and report the truth, but make us aware of their personal perspective. So they'll say, look, I do believe this, but even in spite of that, here are the facts that as I'm tracking with them, as I've come to understand them, as I've tried to do honest and meaningful research. And so that's really what we want as writers, as scientists, from journalism reporters and all that fun stuff. That's all three of these are acceptable. There's real truth, whether we like it or not. There's an accurate reporting of the facts with no bias. There's reporting of the facts with mild but self-aware bias. And even acceptable is reporting facts with a clear bias, because we do all have beliefs, and this would be in the realm of I'm advocating for a certain position, but I'm doing it honestly and truthfully and with integrity. The facts are there, but my personal slant may lean toward advocacy and may require some filtering. Anytime we make an argument, when we make a claim, when we develop a thesis statement, this is what we're doing. We are displaying our bias. We're saying, we think you should believe this thing, and here's the evidence for why. So that's also all within the green zone of levels of information. And so when we start shifting, we're not going to quite get to fake news yet, but we're going to have this kind of danger zone blend in the middle. And so there's a danger zone, and this is kind of what usually gets in the media, came up a few years ago as began this whole fake news thing. It's when we see people selectively reporting facts with strong bias, this style has ethical issues. The facts that are reported would be reported accurately, but details may be intentionally left out, or false inferences may be suggested, like the way we phrase things, or the things we decide to emphasize, or the facial expressions and inflection of our voice tell us what we really think, even if we're reporting the facts, that we skew an interpretation of those facts by either leaving things out or using strategic wordplay. I remember in 2016, not even to get into the ones the protests of 2020, but in 2016 there were some situations where peaceful protesters were just were being called rioters, even though there was no violence, or being called thugs for protesting, and there was this blend, and by using that word choice, it slanted how people perceived the protest, even though there was no violence, even though there was nothing that would put it past the First Amendment. And that was in 2016, and I'm not going to talk about 2020. I'm sure there are plenty of examples, but those sorts of things skew the facts, even though they're reported accurately. And if we leave out certain facts that we know, but that might hurt the point we're trying to make, this is this danger zone. It's a yellow-orange zone. And then we start pushing from here into a red zone, which would be considered true fake news. Everything in the red zone is fake news. The reason we have this overlap is because satire is intentionally fake. And the audience is supposed to know that it's fake. So this is the first level of fake news. This is the least harmful level of fake news. This would be a Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, where he tongue-in-cheek walks through this entire argument with sarcasm about how they should eat Irish babies. It's this thing from hundreds of years ago that's just crazy. Yeah. that's a thing. But satire, it's The Onion, it's it's Saturday Night Live. It's intentionally fake, but done explicitly for entertainment or sarcasm, or to get a different rhetorical point across through this by creating tension with the truth. And so that's satire. It's allowed, it's fake news but it's intentionally so. What can happen is what leads us to the next level of fake news, which is taking something that we agree with, a headline, maybe we don't fact check an article, but uncritically sharing information. This will be the second level of fake news, and there's no intention to deceive, but there's a fail to fact check. So if someone reads something from The Onion and doesn't realize that The Onion produces satire, and they treat it like true, and then go and share it as if it were true, or restate a claim or restate a fact from something fake, because they don't realize, that's one problem. The other is when we see the headline, it's a clickbait headline that we agree with, we scan through the article and we're like, yeah, I believe that. And whether we believe it or not doesn't confirm whether that's actually true. And so this is uncritically sharing misinformation. To get past this, you can use fact-checking websites like Snopes, and a couple other ones that are out there. They'll usually walk through where it started. If they have it, they'll start where it started. Here's the tweet. Here's the thing. Here's whatever. Here's the myth. Here's what we do know. Here's the gray area. But we have to be careful not to uncritically share misinformation. Because we just believe in it. We believe the headline. And so we just quick share it to Facebook or quick share it to Twitter without checking it. The last point on the levels of misinformation, this would be sinister reporting. This is real, true, fake news with an intent to deceive. This is the third level of fake news, complete falsification of facts or intentionally using facts incorrectly or without integrity to mislead. This is often done for political or economic gain. So this is when people are legitimately lying or being dishonest in the way that they're presenting information for their own personal benefit or the benefit of their whatever it is they care about. So people may, for instance, make money off the ads and site visits because of clickbait titles and sensational lies. If an entire news website was created and all the articles had no basis in fact, but they were clickbait titles. They were emotionally sensationalized titles that were designed to draw in people. Well, you can make a lot of money just from the advertising because you get your click rates up. Even if people get there and realize, oh, this is a dumb article, you get your clicks up and that's all that matters. The ads are still around the page. So that would be real and true fake news. So we want to be aware of these different ways of dealing with information. What's good? What's an acceptable practice? What is questionable and what's borderline, and then what is truly fake news, and whether it's accidental or intentional and sinister. We need to be on the lookout when we're taking in information, that we're critically thinking, that we're hearing what people have to say, and even if we trust them, we're going and we're checking it just to be safe, especially in high stakes situations. We need to be careful in high tension situations or in situations where what really happened or what the actual facts or verifiable facts are matters. And so we can get into all kinds of conspiracy theories with any of these things, but most of the journalism out there is landing somewhere between the 3 and 5 range. And I'd say a good amount of it's the 3 and 4 range. That being said, in the late 1800s, not that it hasn't been around for a while, a definite push happened in the United States in journalism and news media that highlighted sensationalism. It was even built into the literature of the land and all that fun stuff. So we just want to be aware that that's carried through, and in some ways, because of the fast news cycle, in some cases we need to be watching out for the strong bias of reporting, but also know that there are ways to fact check simple things. And we do need to be careful that we think about where we're fact checking, that we're not just picking some random blog, that we're not going on YouTube conspiracy videos, that we're actually asking experts in that field. A quick example, and then I'll be done because I know I'm getting on to the 15-minute mark. With the whole COVID thing, a few months ago, my wife and I were watching the news, and one of the news channels we were watching was asking a plastic surgeon in LA, before it had really spread to California and California had even shut down. They were interviewing a plastic surgeon in LA about the COVID situation in New York. And all of the books on this lady's shelf it's just she was the wrong kind of doctor for that type of thing. And so we want to be careful, even when we're getting expert advice on shows, on things like that, that we're being aware of when things are being pointed to bias or when the person's just not knowledgeable in that. You know, I am a doctor of writing, rhetorics, and literacies. I know some things about chemistry, but that doesn't make me an expert, and I should be careful how I deal with things that I am not expert in. We should be humble about what we don't know, and we should stick within our sphere of knowledge, and that will lead to some healthy writing practices that I'll talk about in other videos.